Story number one. They're in an interview with USA Today's Byron Akuhito. I hope I said your name right, Byron. I'm really sorry if I messed it up. Salesforce.com CEO Mark Benioff had this to say about the Google Apps Marketplace. It's kind of like Apple's iPhone App Store, except it's for business software. The idea is that customers can choose from a lot of different vendors and technologies and easily integrate them. That's where the power is. There are a lot of different ways you can integrate these services together. Now, Suster, I have to throw this at you first. Given that you used to work at Salesforce.com,
this is true.
Do you agree with Benioff's statement? And is cloud computing going to be more about collaboration and social computing?
Let me say the following. First of all, I'm the guy who's on record as saying app is crap. And I'm not a big believer in the app marketplace metaphor. Now, I know that it's taken hold these days, particularly because of the iPhone, and now we're seeing it in the iPad. The problem is, I think it's a horrible way ultimately to discover apps, because in a world where we only have a few apps, okay, we can scroll through our pages. But as you have a proliferation of apps, and as you have an app marketplace, and as we become as broad and diverse as the internet is on mobile devices, it's a horrible way to discover apps. And the other thing that I really don't like about it is it places all the control in the person who controls that chokehold. So Apple gets to decide who actually sees the app. Now, I know we're talking about Google, and I'll get to that in a moment. But let me just give you the obvious is you'll probably have remembered this story about the famous political cartoonist. I think he won the Pulitzer Prize. It was the first time that a political cartoonist had ever won the Pulitzer Prize. And Apple decided to ban him from
I remember this.
From the iPhone, from the App Store.
Yeah.
It's a crazy story.
And do we really want to enter a world in which there's a dictator who decides what content we should be able to see?
The Android marketplace has shown that you can have an open or a more open marketplace. I wouldn't say it's perfectly open, but certainly a lot more open and a lot less constraining than what Apple's done with iTunes.
Yeah.
I think Google's and Google's, of course, behind that to a large degree, and Google's behind this app market as well. So I don't know. I would argue that you can do a better job of it. Maybe not as perfect as what you're hoping for, but I think you can get closer.
I don't understand why there needs to be an artificial world, and I want to just continue with this analogy, okay? Sure. When you use Salesforce.com, they have something called the App Exchange. It kind of makes sense there, because you're not in the App Exchange looking for generic applications. If you're in the App Exchange, you're a Salesforce.com user, and you're trying to juice up your product to do something that it can't do today. So you might want to add email marketing in, and you want to say, well, what email marketing solution can I add? But you're not really in the internet. You're in Salesforce.com, and you're trying to juice the application. But the idea that I need app marketplaces for everything is really artificial. So again, let's continue this analogy. Let's call it Facebook.com, right? Facebook.
But it's a popular topic.
Let me go with Facebook for a moment, and I'll avoid Jason's controversy, and we'll kind of just focus on this. Everybody these days is creating Facebook fan pages. Do we want to be in a world in which we're creating internet pages and Facebook fan pages and iPhone App Store pages and then Google App Store pages and on and on and on? I think the beauty of the internet is the decentralization of it and the ability to create once and people discover and you consume. Now, I understand that Google has a vested interest in the outcome here, because the way that you discover information in a non-app marketplace world is through search, and guess who controls search, right?
Of course.
So I get that they have a dog in the fight. I don't believe it's the long-run metaphor for discovery. I really don't.
Interesting.
But I think what Google's App Store is also trying to do is take advantage of the fact that, or try to get people to use Google services bundled with the various apps. So like single login for all these things, et cetera. And sort of tie them together at the hip, so that it's a lot more like what Salesforce is doing, but with sort of generalized services.
So so to that extent, I have to say, I think that makes sense to me. So if you are a Google app user, and let's define it what it is, calendar, email, and you've decided to chuck Outlook and Exchange out the door and use this, it's nice to have a little marketplace that kind of wraps around that product. So that I get. But if Google goes down the route of saying, well, we're going to have a broad, generalized marketplace, then I'm sort of opposed to it. But around a single product makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
Good point, Suster. Andres, do you have anything to add? Do you agree with Benioff's statement that cloud computing is going to be more about collaboration and social computing?
It depends. I was going to comment on Mark's comments that really.
Now we have three Marks, because it's Mark Benioff, Mark Jeffrey, and Mark Suster.
I know. We're talking Suster, right?
Yeah, I think it depends on not so much the discovery mode, because I think that, iTunes is a great example of just being able to discover artists through, some kind of social collaboration. And I think that, they'll be able to do that in any of the app stores. I think the experience today is frustrating, but the experience is only going to get better. I think what is more important is, what do these apps try to do with the data when it comes to sharing the data? And I think that's what's important about what Mark is saying, is that when the applications are around a single framework, like say a Facebook environment or a Salesforce.com environment, then you can define much better how the apps communicate with the API of that environment to exchange data, to have like a contact, address book application that shares data within Facebook. But it's, in a generic way, I agree with him that it's much harder. What is the thing that's binding the data behind all these apps in the marketplace? And I think that this goes back now to your original question. We are going to see a lot of sharing. It's not going to be in the shape that we've been used to seeing it. I think that there's been a lot of sharing around basic things like, if you look at Dropbox, that's a great data sharing application that uses the cloud as the intermediate backbone. I think that we are, I'm curious as to what Mark and what Kevin think about what happens when you get, people wanting to share their contacts from, say, Facebook to MySpace, or the Salesforce contacts, and you want to integrate that with the people that are following you in Facebook.
It's a really interesting topic. It's one that I debated with someone who I can't talk about because he's considering building a product in this area. But here's the thing. So I was debating with someone this idea that Salesforce bought Jigsaw, and the gentleman didn't know Jigsaw, and I was explaining it to him. The beauty of Jigsaw is crowdsourced creation of fresh, relevant information that allows you to discover contact details, address, phone number, title, so on and so forth, of individuals. Salesforce bought that company. It was a hated company by the tech elite. It was a loved company by salespeople. Every salesperson I know.
Absolutely.
And the interesting part of the model is everybody contributes to it, can use it for free, as long as you add value to it. And that's fine, because then you get free production, right?
Yeah.
But anyone who wants to pay for it, who's not going to spend the time consuming it, can pay for it. So you get free production, and other people get value and pay for it. It's a brilliant model. Now, to the point that was raised is, we started playing around with the idea of, what if I could expose my name and address book? What if I could make everything in my name and address book discoverable, so you could discover who my contacts were, but only perhaps if you're in my social graph, right?
Right.
And you say, gosh, I didn't know you had Amanda's mobile phone number. I'm interested in that. So you ping me. You don't automatically get to see it. You don't automatically get to see it, but you ping me, and I can authorize you to see it. So this world in which you can discover contact information from other people in your social cloud, sharing what we've already built, is an interesting idea.
It is interesting.
I like that a lot. We'll have to drag you back on the show, and you can talk more about that sort of thing.
We'll see.
Kevin, do you have any input on this as well?
Well, so it's funny, we're coming from a slightly different direction. Big advocate of sharing and less of an advocate of sharing of information, more sharing of workspace. So from the CloudShare perspective, big fan of the idea, obviously, like Dropbox, of putting an environment in the cloud and letting people do something with it. Unlike Dropbox, which is just about files, CloudShare is about, we call it PC2, right? It's your personal compute in the cloud. We give you your own set of computers to play with and share copies with other people. But it's funny, one of our biggest concerns from clients was antithetical to the information sharing. They want to share the CPU cycles, they want to share their intellectual work in those computing environments, but not expose the information. So kind of an interesting play on, I want apps in the cloud, but I don't want to share them.
So, but people want, in the world that you're describing, people want to share compute resources. They don't, because I kind of have two models in my head. One is the rack space model that says, I don't want to build the infrastructure myself. They've got it. They'll manage it, whatever. But I want my own dedicated servers. And then there's the more traditional Amazon model, AWS, where people are saying, well, I don't even know what the compute resources is. You define how to kind of store my data and give me access through EC2 to compute power, and you deal with it. I'm interested in what your approach is and how you think about that topic and what your customers are telling you.
So our customers love the lack of commitment. I hate to put it that way, but the lack of commitment of Amazon. But I think that at the risk of representing myself as an ex-geek, and I'll make that claim of X, and you all can debate that. But at the risk of saying ex-geek and representing our customer base, people again don't like sharing resources. If I can have, for the same price and the same lack of commitment, temporary servers already pre-installed with the operating systems I need, with the applications I need, I'm going to take that over Amazon, especially if it comes with a rack space-like privacy. So again, if you give me a choice between committing to a rack space with real hardware or going with an ephemeral virtual machine, perhaps at a better price, I'd probably go with the better price. But if you then said, okay, given that it's virtual, would you commit to Amazon where you're really not sure what the underpinnings are, you're never sure if they're really there for you, or something like a CloudShare where it's your computer, your storage, your OS, everything pre-installed. Our customers have obviously chosen to go with the thing that is guaranteed to be there for them and guaranteed to be theirs.
Is there a minimum commitment, minimum period of time?
For our pro users, no. It's a free product and therefore zero commitment on anyone's side. The folks who come to CloudShare/pro, usually individual and small business users, sign on, sign off for as little as a minute or as long as months. On the enterprise side, we do a classic bill per month approach, and again, like Salesforce for that matter, discount for a length of time. But it's a pretty minimal commitment. Again, we actually like Salesforce a lot as a model, kind of frown on the cloud computing model that says nickel and dime you to death for every little bit of bandwidth or compute use, and are big fans of the, and don't shoot me for this, of the application model, where you pay for a seat and that seat entitles you to use the apps as much as you want. In our case, use the cloud IT as a service as much as you want.
Interesting. Well, I think we'll move on to story number 2.
Jeez, I know, my goodness. All right, so we'll do story 2, then we should probably do a sponsor break.
Yeah, we'll do a sponsor break after. Panasonic has announced that they're jumping into the cloud. So starting this fall, the company is going to be implementing Oracle's cloud computing service across its 5 factory solution plants. And then they're also working on setting up an entire cloud-based system for better collaboration among its, I think, 200,000 employees. And they're going to be using IBM. It's expected. So with all the talk about the different providers, Google's really trying to go after enterprise. Why do you think they've chosen IBM? Mark Suster.
Let me start with the basics. Don't you remember? I don't know. Maybe I'll age myself when
Nobody
I say
gets fired for buying IBM.
That was this thing, right? No one ever gets fired for hiring IBM. And the same was true with my original company. I used to work for what's now Accenture. Always wonder why huge corporations would pay 3 times the price you'd have to pay for anyone else. Listen, when you're talking at scale, you mentioned 220,000 employees.
Around 200,000 employees.
So let's not compare Google. Right. Google does not know how to serve the enterprise. They don't. Full stop. There's no customer support. There's no, installation. There's no SI capability. There's no mentality. They make all their profits from search. Yeah. And therefore, there's no even mentality about, I'm going to make commitments to you and keep those commitments from Google. Phenomenal company, not an enterprise company, and a long way from becoming one. So I don't even think they'd be under consideration set. So for me, it would be, would Panasonic for cloud computing choose someone like Amazon?
Right.
But Amazon is very much a warehouse.
Yeah, again, the wrong culture.
Yeah, it may be the right culture if you want to do it all yourself.
Right.
But it's a warehouse. It's stack them high, sell them cheap, and that's the beauty of Amazon. That's why a lot of people like them. But I don't think it pretends well to a big global company that wants a high degree of touch points, right? And so I think that's really what IBM provides. They're probably providing system integration. They're probably providing a level of service, maybe even customer support. It's a single throat to choke. And it's probably a layer of management services. IBM owns a bunch of network management platform tools. So I don't think there are a million options for someone like Panasonic in the cloud. It surprises me that IBM didn't move faster to become perceived as the cloud company. It really surprises me.
And that, I think that's the point, too, that I'm pointing at with this story, because we've talked a lot in other shows about IBM and Microsoft and all these other companies playing catch-up. And actually, I want to jump into this third story quickly before we go to sponsor break, because it's to your point here. Despite all the buzz around Google Apps specifically, there was a report that just came out from Forrester Research, and it said that 81% of enterprises it surveyed are running Microsoft Office 2007. And that's compared to just 4% with Google Apps. Now, that point alone isn't surprising, but what's more, 1/3 of respondents are already planning an upgrade to Office 2010. 1/3 of respondents. So meanwhile, Google's pushing the message, we're not an Office alternative, we're a collaboration tool complement. That's their actual statement. We're not an Office alternative, we're a collaboration tool complement. So when you look at these sorts of things pitting one against the other, who's really scared of who here?
They're both scared of each other. I mean, I think Google's right. They're not a replacement for Microsoft Office. Microsoft Word still kicks ass. Nobody has surpassed that. I won't use it for large I will use it for large documents. I will not use Google. However, when we do show notes, we do them in Google Apps so that we can share them. But these are tiny. These are like a couple pages kind of things. The collaboration is more important than actual document, the full suite of features that's in Microsoft Word.
So for your book, you're using Word.
You betcha. Yeah, I would never do that. I actually tried to do it in Google Docs at one point just to see, and it basically just died. I can't handle it.
If anybody's a Gmail user, and I suspect all of us are in our personal lives, of which I'm one, this last week will tell you why they're at 4% market share. The service has been down a lot. And email delivery has been coming in really slowly. Now, I know at the end of the day, a lot of times when you have Exchange, you're relying on your own IT department, and often services go down or whatever. Google is not geared up to serve enterprise. They don't get it. They don't understand how to service big companies. They may one day. Salesforce.com knows how to do that, right? So they understand how to sell, how to service, how to support. Google doesn't get it. And when I look at how they do product releases, when I look at, even the Nexus, they launch it with almost no thought about how they're going to support the damn product. It's not in the mindset. It's an engineering company who, I have a saying I like to say, which is, in a strong winds, even turkeys can fly. Right? So when you are so successful at your core product, arguably the most successful business and product in the history, maybe, in a short period of time, then you get forgiven for the fact that you produce a lot of stuff that's not quite as good. And that you're not quite as dedicated on. And the reason I point this out is, I don't know if you guys remember the Peanut Butter Manifesto. Do you remember the Peanut Butter Manifesto?
The Yahoo thing.
So I think it was Brad Garlinghouse wrote this memo called the Peanut Butter Manifesto, which was, at Yahoo we don't do anything very well. We kind of spread our peanut butter across the bread, and we don't specialize in anything. Let's be honest. Google's as peanut butter as Yahoo. They just kicked Yahoo's ass in search, right? So they're making so much money that no one cares that it's peanut butter. So anyway, to a long answer to a short question.
Are you going to stand up and sing Peanut Butter and Jelly for us too, Suster?
I will not sing on this show.
He's singing later.
I do want to say to you, because I think it all points to the fact of why people en masse are not giving it up. They're not going to give up Exchange anytime soon, or Office products. The biggest threat to Microsoft, frankly, is at the OS level, because that device ain't running Windows, right?
My iPad.
Right, and your iPhone is not running it, and your BlackBerry and my BlackBerry is not running it, and there's Linux as an alternative. And that's what scares me more about Microsoft than immediately their Office platform.
Andres, if I can jump in, I think,
sure, of course.
To this point and the previous point, in terms of the division between enterprise class and not enterprise class, I don't agree with Mark that the division is as strong as he points out when it's anything below the app layer. And I know the show is concentrates on cloud compute and applications, but really when you dig deeper, we use Amazon as one of several providers, and we allow enterprise customers to get on the Amazon cloud for storage, or the Iron Mountain cloud for storage, or many other providers. And I can tell you that from the perspective of a customer, using it to power the storage services that they have, their NAS boxes inside the enterprise, they couldn't care less. And from our perspective, in terms of monitoring Amazon uptime, availability, any kind of integrity problems on the data, they are indistinguishable from the enterprise, so from what you've come to, believe are traditional enterprise class storage providers. That is, the customers see the cloud in our system very much like, I don't care where I'm getting my hard drives from. If it's a hard drive from Hitachi, if it's a hard drive from IBM, it's just a hard drive. It's a commodity thing. And as long as it performs reasonably well, I have a whole system around it that gives me the high availability that I'm desiring. The SLA is provided by the technology that's wrapping the commodity system of the cloud. And I think it's very different when you're talking about Google and Google Apps, because you're sitting right up against the user. But when you are sitting on top of core infrastructure services like storage, you can add with a software layer something that adds the level of reliability that, say, a RAID controller adds on top of a very inexpensive disk drive. And then you don't have to care so much about where the disk drive comes from.
But I would say to you, I agree with one exception, which is I suspect clients, when they're looking at NAS, except that NAS might be backed up or might be supplemented by AWS, by S3 in particular, or by Iron Mountain. Listen, but if you were backed up by cockamamie companies that no one had ever heard of, I suspect people would care a lot more. Amazon has earned its chops, I think, with enterprise-grade clients and startup companies that it can provide that service as a commodity.
Absolutely, but that is a distinction. Like you were saying, it's Google hasn't been able to do that because they don't do it.
Exactly.
They failed Google Apps.
They don't get it.
Amazon. Right. Amazon actually has a reputation that goes beyond being a warehouse provider. I mean, they do deliver the most reliable storage platform out there, or as reliable as the one that I can almost bet it'll be more reliable than anything IBM puts out there.
I agree.
They've been doing it for longer.
I think both of you guys are missing the point.
Running all day long.
Being brutal and
let me jump in and grab Kevin here for 2 seconds. I think you wanted to say something too, Kevin?
Sure. Sorry. I was jumping up and down and screaming here in the background when Mark was going on, and I was with you, Anders, up until you supported Mark on the Google Apps question. Gentlemen, I think you're both missing the point. You sound like the quotes back in the mainframe days about, why does anyone need a PC? These things are less reliable. They're underpowered. That's not the point. The point is that, and Anders started to say this, and I was hoping you were going to keep going with this. Yes, bandwidth is too low to use cloud beautifully for individuals right now. The apps are a little shaky. It's like the early days of the internet. Yeah, most of those servers are running on people's houses, other than the backbone. The point, however, is where Anders was going. If there were higher bandwidth and the apps were slightly more rigorous, I don't care whether the thing on my screen is coming off my local hard drive or from somewhere out in the cloud. And Kevin, so I think that transition is what Google's forcing.
Kevin, we completely agree on that. I guess what I'm saying is I think Google reputationally has not stepped up to a point where people can trust them to provide enterprise-level customer support and service. And once they get trusted and that becomes a commodity, I think you'll see people adopt it en masse in the same way we're talking about S3 because people trust Amazon now. I remember, so I ran 2 cloud companies. I started my first in 99, my second in 2005. When my guys first said that we were going to give up our storage and put it on S3, I said, you are smoking dope. I will not do that, right? And we ran pilots. And it performed over a 9 to 12 month period of time. We had the flexibility and the cost, and frankly, they were as reliable, if not more reliable than us. So we went en masse, and I think the industry trusts now Amazon S3 en masse in a way I'm not sure that they yet trust Google. And I think they do trust Salesforce.com in my experience.
Fair, but is it a marketing issue or a technology issue?
My view is it's more than a marketing issue. I think it's a reliability, a customer support, and a commitment to serving enterprise customers.
I'd go with the commitment, having personal experience inside and outside of Google. I think that, to your point, the mindset is still one of hey, we're a bunch of folks eating pizza, serving a bunch of folks eating pizza late at night.
By the way, I should tell you, my wife worked for Google for 2 years, so I do have some inside perspective there.
Do you agree with the pizza comment?
Yeah, pizza comment spot on.